Hi, I'm Kelly Miller. I am an educator, feminist, and campaign manager, and you're watching Atheist Edge.
So with the Boy Scouts, I just kind of remember there being this very clear message of being against homosexuality and protecting the children from leaders being homosexual, right?
Yeah.
So you were saying that that's changed now?
There's really two different issues at play there, and they kind of cross each other's worlds a lot. It goes back to a lawsuit that the Boy Scouts dealt with in 1978. For the first time ever, the Boy Scouts got sued as a national organization and lost. And it was a case that involved a Boy Scout troop that was set up as a front for teenage male prostitution.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a really bad deal, and this was in 1978. Wow. And when it happened, the Boy Scouts were in a state of shock, and they didn't really know what to do. And not long after that, they came out with the ban on homosexuals. There had never been a ban before that.
I see.
And now, no one's ever officially said the two things are linked, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out that one caused the other. And suddenly there was this ban. Okay, homosexuals are no longer allowed in Boy Scouts. That created all kinds of problems that exist to this day. Before that, the Boy Scouts did an amazing job of having a balancing act of keeping the people on the left and the right liking them. Yeah, at one point, the two biggest sponsors of the Boy Scouts were the NRA and the NFL. One of the major unions. I keep forgetting their acronym.
I don't know.
I'll remember in a minute. So they were very. When that happened, and suddenly all the right-wing churches said, "Hey, the Boy Scouts are one of us. They believe they don't." They're in our world, and so there was these nice little ramifications of now these evangelical churches and started liking the Boy Scouts, and that generated volunteers and that generated revenue. So it was initially interpreted as, hey, suddenly we got some love coming our way because of this. Well, the flip side of that is the more liberal side of the world was not liking it at all, and they were slowly fading out, and they weren't as vocal about it, so the organization didn't see it coming as much, and but internally they were also struggling with the fact that once they banned homosexuals, and like any other organization, there's internal fighting going on, there's always all kinds of politics, people just started turning people in as homosexuals to get them kicked out.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shock.
It's like a Red Scare.
Yes, very, very much so. And the Boy Scouts figured that out fairly early on.
Okay.
And to deal with the homosexual issue, they put in what's called youth protection guidelines. And they did something very smart. They got a bunch of psychologists together and some experts in the field. And this is way before anybody else was dealing with these issues, and said, we got an issue here with homosexuals getting into the Boy Scouts to access these children. I'm using their words, not my own.
Right. Yeah.
So how do we deal with this? And they came up with guidelines on how to get that done, and they were pretty smart. There were things like, you can't have a meeting with just one adult and kids. There always has to be two adults, and that is dogma now. That if you want to get kicked out of the Boy Scouts, try to run a meeting without another adult there. They will absolutely run you out.
Wow.
So they were very, very serious about it, and nobody wants children to get molested. That was something that everybody came to agreement on, that we gotta deal with this. And that's when they finally came to the understanding of, this isn't a homosexual issue. This is a pedophile issue, and they're different issues.
Right.
But in 1978, who understood that?
Right.
And so they came to an understanding of that, and that's why I think by 1989, when I was asking about it, they were saying, it is the homosexual issue has nothing to do with endangering children. Now, the Boy Scouts have been collecting data on child abuse cases since the 1920s. There's files that
Wow.
go back there. They had to be released publicly because of a lawsuit about 7 years ago. And because of that, you can find all these online. They had some people come in and examine all the files and try to find out what we can learn from that. It's kind of sad it took a lawsuit to get them to do that.
Right.
But they wanted to get up in front of it before, because they knew these things were going to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb. The one conclusion they were able to draw was not one child was ever molested by a homosexual who was out.
Oh, wow.
Everybody who molested a child was at least pretending to be heterosexual or was heterosexual in every other aspect of their life.
Right.
And so that was a bit of a shock to people when that came out that way. But
A shock.
Yeah.
Only 7 years ago?
yeah.
That's interesting.
So, well, we'd never seen these files before. We had no idea what we were facing, and I went through them as much as I could. There's thousands of them, but
Wow.
I went through the ones that were in my local area and all that, and yeah, that was a very common denominator. They were looking for other patterns and really couldn't find any. Some men were married, some were not married, some were women. You know, some were strong leaders in their community. Some were people that that didn't have any kind of a profile outside of that. You also saw a lot of infighting going on when these cases would come up. You know, National would not like the way the local council handled things, so a lot of the memos were about how things were not appropriately dealt with, things like that. And while all this is going on, society was changing, and our understanding and our attitudes about homosexuals were changing.
Right.
And the big issue that hit the Boy Scouts was the generation, the millennials, who are putting children in scouting right now, have a very different attitude than previous generations had about homosexuality, and they weren't putting their kids in scouts because of this.
Right.
At one point,
Right.
it was put in front of we professionals that 75% of all millennials believed in gay marriage.
Right.
And so that pretty much says 75% of people will not put their children in our organization. So what are we going to do? That was by far the biggest factor in making that decision, is the numbers were dwindling dramatically. I remember the last year I was in the organization, they put out that the national average for children recruited at a school into scouting was 8. When I started my career, that was 50.
Wow.
So these people were not joining the organization, and that was one of the reasons. There are lots of reasons, and we can do a whole nother show on all the reasons why people stop joining the Boy Scouts, and they have nothing to do with politics. They have a lot more to do with Xbox than anything else. When we were kids, and being sent to your room was a horrible thing. Now being sent to your room is where the kids want to go. But this was why they dealt with it. The Boy Scouts, more than anything else, is a business, and they want members, and they will change whatever law, whatever rule they can to make sure that the kids join and that the donors keep giving.
Right.
And that's where their real conflict comes in.
Yeah.
The donors are older, and they hold a very different value system than the people who are putting their kids in the organization. So the organization having to balance between the two is what causes the problems, is they can't figure out, if we appease one, we upset the other.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because it must be kind of jarring for someone who is part of the organization and believes that them blocking homosexuals from the organization is protecting the religious integrity of it and therefore ensuring its prosperity, right?
And that is certainly the line that they were putting out there to everybody.
And it would be really jarring to have that shift happen in order to maintain flourishing, and kind of have that shift in mentality as an organization, but also as people within it, and seeing this happen, it sort of challenges that idea that following a religious doctrine is going to lead to prosperity of your organization.
Right. And they handled the shift so awkwardly. When it first came out in 2013 that they were going to allow homosexuals in, you know, it was going to be a quick vote. They thought they could just kind of sneak it in at a national board meeting. There was an enormous national backed away from that and put us through 6 months of hell, where we were allowing people to put their opinions forth on the subject, and we had to go collect data and hold meetings, all during peak fundraising season. We're supposed to be raising money,
right? And
we've just upset the apple cart in a tremendous way, and it was it really rattled the organization to its core, and in the end, they knew that the majority of the people in the organization was okay with the change, but it was the money people that weren't okay with it.
Right.
And so they had
so it's balancing money versus members.
and they had to, and I'm not just talking about the millennials, even the professionals. One of the things that I did when I, in the last council that I was in, or one of the last councils I was in, I had to survey the staff and find out how they felt on this issue. We had about 100 staff members. Only 8 of them wanted the ban to stay in place. Everybody wanted that ban lifted. Everybody. This was not something that the organization just clung to. But the fear was, if we get rid of it, the big donors are going to leave, and many big donors did leave.
Yeah. So is that kind of part of the shift to the heritage? That those donors might have gone there? Well,
then the Boy Scout version of that was something called Trail Life. It got started immediately in this whole wave of lifting the ban on homosexuals. A lot of one professional nationwide of the 5,000 professionals left. That was something I found interesting too, is you thought there would be all these people who, it's amazing how a paycheck can change your attitude on social issues.
Right. Oh, man.
But he only left because he had a donor behind him to start this organization called Trail Life.
I see, yeah.
And so they made the rules even stricter than what the Boy Scouts had. Not only did you have to believe in God to be a member, you had to be a Christian to be a member. And they had a big flurry for about a year, but the last I read about them, they were fading away. There's not a whole lot going on with them either.
What year was that?
This was 2013.
Okay, wow, yeah, so really recent.
Yeah, it's been not too long at all since all that happened. And then when they lifted that ban, they only lifted it on youth. They didn't have enough support to lift it on adults as well. Well, you can see how quickly that's going to be a problem. A kid gets his Eagle Scout at 16 years old, and so he gets the highest honor there is in scouting, and 2 years later he can't be a volunteer because he's homosexual. So that held up about 2 years when that first wave hit, and then they very unceremoniously just lifted the ban completely on everything.
Okay, I'm so kind of surprised by that, because lifting the ban, because the reason for the ban happened from children being affected by supposedly this issue in leadership, right?
Which is why they left the ban on the leaders and lifted it off the kids.
Right.
There was a lot more sympathy for that, of how can you hold it against a 13-year-old boy?
Right. It's just surprising that it was blanket that way to begin with, of kids being banned if they were homosexual.
Right. Right. Well, we used to say things like, how can an 8-year-old know if he's a homosexual or not?
Right. And
we also said, how can an 8-year-old know he's an atheist or not? Which is so funny to me now when I realize, from a more secular standpoint, we saw it exactly backwards.
Right.
But then a couple years, so in 2013 they lifted the ban on gay youth. In 2015 they lifted the ban on gay leaders, and then in 2017 they lifted the ban on trans.
Oh, right.
Which seemed like all this was leading towards just lifting all bans. But this last summer, they reinvigorated their stance on keeping atheists out of the organization. At their annual meeting in June, they put forth a statement out of the blue. It really wasn't anything of consequence that pertained to anything that was going on, but they put out a whereas statement saying that you have to believe in God, and they actually strengthened the language. And my interpretation of that is that was a bone they were throwing to the big donors, saying we're not throwing away all of our values. We still want God-fearing children coming up to this organization and God-fearing leaders. And
I've always hated that phrase.
Yeah,
God-fearing.
And their verbiage before that was non-sectarian, was very careful not to offend people of other religions. When they reiterated this statement, they actually put in very Christian verbiage into it that made it sound like you pretty much have to be a Christian to be in the organization. They didn't say that directly, but they talked about belief in God. Well, Hindus believe in more than one God, so are you saying they can't be scouts anymore? It was very odd in the way they phrased it.
Do you think they're moving more toward Christianity being a requirement?
No, I think they're just trying to appease the donor base that is primarily Christian.
So when did you leave?
I left in the end of 2015. And
did that have anything to do with your change in belief? Yeah,
it was definitely a huge factor in it. There was a lot of things that were going on at that time, and they all kind of culminated in the decision that this isn't what I need to be doing anymore. I need to find something else to do. And I had recently gotten divorced, and I was living away from where I had been for the majority of my career in small rural Texas area, where everybody wants to know everybody's business. And so me being an atheist wasn't going to last very long in that. And I don't know that anyone ever found out, but it was very common to be asked on Monday morning why they didn't see me in church.
So how long do you think you were closeted within the organization?
I would say probably 12 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Again, as with all atheists, it came in stages. It took until after my divorce to say, okay, I can kind of be anybody I want now, so who am I really? The first meeting I went to with an atheist organization was only 6 months before I left the Boy Scouts. And that was a huge factor, because once I found people who saw the world the way that I saw the world, and that created such an emotional response in me, I think I just couldn't hide it anymore. Before that, I could play the game. And after that, I just couldn't play it anymore. I couldn't pretend that I was something that I wasn't.
Did you think that you were kind of alone in your lack of belief before that?
I knew there were other atheists out there. The online community, I had experienced that somewhat. But for the most part, there was a lot of loneliness associated with it, because I wanted to reach out to somebody about what I was thinking and what I was going through, and everyone I knew was a believer. And so I got to where I didn't think I could trust anybody, and for good reason. I couldn't trust anybody, not within an organization that puts such stock in that. So I never shared it internally with anybody in the Boy Scouts. Since I have left, I've told some people, and some of them were shocked. Some of them said, "Yeah, we saw that a long time ago."
Yeah, it's funny how your mentality changes, and then certain things about you sort of seep out of that sort of reveal that.
Yeah, the place I was working, I definitely didn't fit in. After that, up until that point, they accepted me, and things were good. And after I started visiting a secular organization, just almost immediately attitudes changed, and I got paranoid for a while that somehow they know. And it doesn't help that atheist organization met at the Democrat headquarters. So I was more scared someone find that out than find out that I was an atheist. And I would actually park a mile away and walk a very jagged route to get there, so no one knew that that's where I was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long time to hold that in.
Yeah.
12 years.
Yeah, and like I said, you can play all kinds of mental games when you have to. And I had to. I had a child to get through school and a wife to support, and when I found that I didn't have those responsibilities anymore, I said, the most important thing to me is to be me and come out as the person that I am. And but in rural Texas, that's not as easy as you'd think.
So how long have you been out then?
Well, I'm not out to everybody. I don't, I'm using kind of vague terms. I'm not saying the cities that I was in and the like, because I'm not, there's a lot of folks I really don't ever want to be out to, that there's no reason to bring them pain, and it would definitely bring some people pain.
Yeah.
But I also feel a responsibility. This organization is by and large a good organization. It brings kids to science when others don't. I mean, to become an Eagle Scout, you've got to earn merit badges in the major sciences. And some kids discover astronomy for the first time. Steven Spielberg found cinematography because of his exposure through the Boy Scouts.
Interesting.
There's all kinds of great things that they do. They just throw this other thing in on the other side, saying, okay, we just spent this whole week at camp and you've learned about nature and you've learned about the stars and you've learned about these skills you can do. So now go thank God for that.
Right.
And they don't need that part. They could walk away from that part. And most of them don't anyway. That's I ran summer camps for many years, and we would hold church services every Wednesday. 20% of the kids would show up. It wasn't a requirement. And they would much rather go build fires and do other things like that. So it is not like that. And I've been visiting with secular organizations, trying to kind of educate them on what the Scouts really are, because I think we are so far removed from them that we think that they're just a church organization, and they're not. They're a good organization caught in a bad place, and I don't know the solution for them either, because the dropping of the ban on atheists would absolutely dry up their funding. And so a lot of kids would miss out on a good program if that happened. So I don't know what they're supposed to do.
Well, then I guess there would be a religious organization, though, right?
Yes. They're a private organization, and they require religious expression. I shy away from their religious organization because, well, what's the religion? There's Methodists, there's Hindus, there's every kind of religion you can imagine. Maybe
a theistic organization, right?
They're definitely that. That is something that they, that would be a very pure definition. But again, what is that even?
Well, I mean, there is a difference, though, between calling it a Christian organization and calling it a religious organization.
Very much so.
Because I think religion sort of is the umbrella that theism is. Theism, it gets a little bit less specific about there being sort of a deity, but, not deity, there being a specific doctrine, maybe.
Right.
Theism it can be that like spiritual sort of general, there's something out there kind of thing. I think it can fall within that umbrella. But I think what you're talking about, what this organization values and what it sort of strives for is a religious message.
Yes. Well,
whether it's general or not.
Right. They in their statement they talk about how the observance of religious traditions will turn you into the best possible citizen.
Right.
There's no evidence of that. There's no proof that that's true.
Yeah.
And another thing that shocks people is they will allow agnostics to join. By what their definition of agnostic is, because in their mind, as an agnostic, you still hold out the possibility there's a God.
Right.
And so you wouldn't have a problem taking the oath because you don't definitively believe that no God exists.
Right.
So the people that they are saying can't be members is a very small group of us. And and I can't even honestly say that I'm not an agnostic. If someone showed me proof of God today, I'll believe it if it's definitive proof.
Well, and I think that definition is atheism.
Yes.
But it's just a different a different type of atheism. But I think the vast majority would, by my definition, be agnostic atheist. You're not
Right.
saying there definitely isn't a God, but that's not what atheism is. Atheism is about whether you believe or not, which you can't control. But
Right.
but Gnosticism versus agnosticism is about what you claim to know for sure. And I don't think most atheists claim to know 100% that there isn't this.
That's
but just
yeah,
that
that's
we don't
fair.
accept that claim.
Right, and we will accept it if you give us if you give us
Right.
proof, we'll accept it.
Please do.
now, what I just said about allowing agnostics, that applies to members. That doesn't apply to professionals.
Okay.
The standard for professional was much higher. In fact, there was something I read, which I wish I could find back, but early on in my career, the requirement was that I attended church weekly. That was a requirement. I know hardly any professionals in scouting that meet that requirement. That's not something that they investigate, but it's in print.
So as a employer, what about their status allows them to make that requirement?
Because, again, this is where the Boy Scouts are very law-oriented.
Right.
They know what the law is. You cannot, before you can become a professional, you have to be a registered volunteer. And so you have to fill out an application, and in that application you say you will do your duty to God. So they don't, if you're not willing to fill out that application, they don't have to hire you.
Right.
And this has been tested. People have sued the organization. What it doesn't do is, at the time that I realized I didn't believe in God, I was serving a very long tenure in one place and was holding the same position, so I wasn't having to sign that form because I wasn't moving. Every time you move, you re-sign the form. Every time you go to a new place. So I did sign it one time when I got promoted to be the executive director of the rural Texas area, and I wasn't even thinking. I just, I got a new job and more money. I'm going to sign.
Yeah.
And so, the gravity of that hit me later on. That you've agreed to do your duty to God. And even then, I played little mental games with myself. Of, well, what is God? Is the lake God? I can define God whatever I want God to be. We're non-sectarian, so I can do whatever.
Darwin's
I
a
want
god, right?
Yeah. Well, it really wasn't until when I was dealing with all these issues, I started seeing a therapist, and the therapist told me, you can't keep doing this. It's gonna cause you mental anguish, and which it already is, because you're here seeing me. Yeah. You're gonna need to find something else, some other career to do. And at first, I thought, she's crazy. I've been playing this game for a long time, but it was just slowly chipping away at me, and sitting at meetings where they're getting children to pray, and teaching them in this non-existent entity that's somehow going to make their life better. I just couldn't keep doing it. Eventually, I had to walk away. So
what was it like to leave then?
Hard. It was difficult. I had never done any other thing in my life professionally, and so I had to
have that conversation with people you'd worked with for years. And did you tell them why?
Some. Initially, I was asked to come back when I left. One of my previous council I had been in had said, we got a place here for you if you want to come back. And I had to consider that because money was getting short, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I figured I would do something in the nonprofit world because that was all my experience, but the amount of paid nonprofit positions that aren't Christian oriented is incredibly small. So that was a shock to the system, as I'm out there trying to interview for these jobs, and the people around the table talking to me got a big cross on, and okay, well this is going to be a challenge. And
it's hard to go out, leave an organization for the religiosity of it, and then to get into it again.
I had a relative who suggested teaching to me, and I thought about it, and that was always the kind of part of Boy Scouts I liked the most, was when I could get up and teach something. But usually I just taught adults. I never taught kids. We left that to the volunteers in the Boy Scouts. So I started to substitute teach just to have a little income coming in and to see if it was something I like, and I surprisingly took to it. I thought this is something I could do, and I had a few opportunities to do that, and so I got certified, and now I teach social studies in a school district in the area and love it.
That's really good. Yeah, I really love education.
In fact, next week I'm teaching a whole section on world religion, so
Nice.
that's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I think I took world religion in college, and I think that the teacher was an atheist, because once you learn a certain amount about different religions, it doesn't take a long time.
I think that'd be your best teacher on that. I'm excited about doing it because I can bring to the table an objective view of what these religions and what they've meant societally. And that's the important part of religion. We can't ignore it. We can't pretend religion doesn't exist. It has shaped the world we live in, and we need to talk about it. But we don't really need to proselytize, and I don't know how you could be a good Baptist and teach someone objectively about Hinduism. How can you do that?
Yeah, I mean, religious literacy has always been something that I'm a big fan of. Well, I'm glad that you have been able to be more authentically yourself in the place that you work and with what you do.
Well, I thought the best thing that I did in the whole process was put on my dating profile that I was an atheist. I dated a lot of Christians after my divorce, and had some really negative experiences, and women who thought they could deal with my atheism but couldn't. And I finally said, that's it, I will only date atheists. And a couple of days later, met the love of my life, and so her and I are building a fantastic secular life together. And so that's definitely the highlight of the whole experience.
That's good, yeah. It's amazing what happens when you're able to sort of lift that weight off of your shoulders of secrecy.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, we're so glad to have you here on the show and in the secular community, and this is part of why we do what we do, to give that voice and that perspective, to let people know they're not alone, and also with the Metroplex Atheists is that we create a community and allow people to gain that sense of family that they may have lost. So
very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Atheist Edge. Walking the edge of what some consider offensive. But your feelings don't matter here, only facts. Edgy commentary on the dangers of doctrine, the foibles of faith, the bullshit of belief, the stupidity of superstition, and the idiocy of indoctrination. With razor-sharp wit, curiosity, and critical thought, we take an unblinking look at today's religions. We are Atheist Edge.